I'm Brother Thomas Martin. I'm in my third year at the House of Studies. I was raised in a pretty conservative Evangelical Lutheran Church of America congregation. I was reading some St. Augustine, particularly the Confessions, and that seemed natural to me at the time because Lutherans sort of claim Augustine as one of their own. His theology of grace and other things was very attractive to Lutherans. The more I read of Augustine, the less Lutheran he seemed, and the more it seemed like his concept of, say, the episcopacy was more like that of the Catholic bishops than that of the Lutheran bishops, and other things like that. So I started to kind of wonder, what is this? I didn't know much about the Catholic Church, but I started to kind of think, is this story that I've really been told that yes, it's the New Testament church, it's Augustine's church, and now it's the Lutheran view, is that really a coherent whole, or maybe not? I was at Philmont Scout Ranch, 16 years old, and so there's three, at least at that time, there are three kind of religious options for Sunday at Philmont. You could either go to the conservative or Orthodox Jewish service, you could go to the Mass, or you could do this sort of kumbaya ecumenical thing. And there was a younger scout in my troop, who I think might have actually been a little bit of a lapsed Catholic, but he knew he was Catholic. And so when given kind of the three options, he wanted to go to Mass. But he didn't want to go by himself. And I thought, well, knowing intellectually that the Lutheran service was closer to Mass anyway, having had certain intellectual questions about Catholicism, I thought, well, instead of singing Kumbaya, why don't I just go to Mass with this kid? I'd never been to Mass before, and even though it was a simple Mass at a very simple chapel, as you'd expect at a scout ranch in the New Mexico Rockies, I was blown away. There were kids from all over the country who'd never met one another before, all coming together and praying and singing together, and really it was when they sang the Gloria that, to me, that just brought home the connection between lower C Catholic and uppercase Catholic, the sense of that you have these kids from all over, this sort of universal church, who are all just able to come together and sing and know these words that have been sung for hundreds of years. And who's doing that? The upper C Catholics. And versus my experience growing up as a Lutheran, where every congregation is pretty different, has their own little translation differences or whatever. Everyone's using giant reams of paper to get through the service. If you go to another Lutheran church, even though they're basically doing the same liturgy, you don't necessarily know what's going on. We could never have done that. It was just the energy of the scouts coming from all over the country, and yet not feeling awkward worshiping together. Like, they knew they were part of one worshiping community, even though they had never met each other before. Whereas the Protestant services that I'd been to many times at various scouting events always felt the complete opposite. Like, here are a bunch of people who all have a very genuine faith, and they're scouts. They're sort of generally enthusiastic about life, but they weren't enthusiastic about worshiping together because they didn't know what they were doing, they didn't know how to interact with each other, and things were always just kind of an awkward mess. I started going to Mass in high school then after that, but I also was in a bunch of other activities, particularly the debate team, that I was frequently away on the weekends, so it wouldn't have necessarily even been realistic to do RCA or make a commitment to weekly Mass going at that point. And then I went to Boston College, not because it was a Catholic school. I knew that it was in a vague sense, but that wasn't really what drew me. And really, that's where I started going to Mass every Sunday, and really even thinking of myself as Catholic. But I hadn't really gotten rid of the sort of Protestant world idea that if you're a Lutheran and you want to be a Methodist, you just show up. There's no, unless you want to be on church council or something, there's no class, you just are. And I didn't quite grasp that Catholicism didn't work like that. And it wasn't until I was in a fairly serious relationship with a young lady, and she's like, "Oh, you're Catholic, right?" I said, "Yeah." She said, "Oh, well, I know you didn't grow up that way. When were you confirmed in the church? When you received into the church?" And I said, "Boy." So we dated for a while. Those things end as they do, but not acrimoniously. She was my confirmation sponsor. Then I guess at that point, I already maybe had certain thoughts of religious life then. BC is a Jesuit school. The Jesuits were very good to me. But Jesuit life didn't seem quite communal enough for what I would need. And I hadn't grown up Catholic, obviously. I didn't know other religious orders really. So I just kind of put it out of my head, worked. in Boston, and but it just didn't quite go away. Especially when I go to adoration, I would always feel this kind of undertow again towards religious life, towards spending time with the Lord. And well, I guess it's been clear by now that I don't do things quickly. I don't make big changes quickly, so it took me a little while to deal with that. But in the end, it seemed obvious that I was either going to stop being Catholic or start being serious about a vocation. I'm very happy to turn out to be Dominicans. It took a little bit of exploring because I didn't know what my options were, just going various different places. But to be honest, the first time that I was at vocation weekend here at the House of Studies and heard the brothers chanting, the closest experience would be that same experience that I'd had at Philmont, where it was just like, this is beautiful. And whereas at Philmont it had been sort of the geographic spread of the church, here it was sort of temporal. Like here is something that is 1,800 years old, but still vibrantly alive and present, more so than any, cutting edge youth worship service I'd ever been to. And so that sense of the historical continuity of the church then added to the geographic continuity just was huge for me.